Good day and welcome. Happy to be with you again. And in this particular lecture, as we continue our series of lectures regards the e-learning course of the UNCCD, I want to introduce you to the reporting process. Now, reporting is a fundamental part of the implementation of the UNCCD. As a matter of fact, if you look at Article 26 in the Convention, it says that parties are supposed to report on the activities they have undertaken to implement the Convention. So reporting is a fundamental part of this process, and parties are therefore required to carry out this obligation. Now, what really is reporting? In the first place, what is a report? And why do we need to have reports? Well, a very simple definition of a report could be it's a sort of stock taking. In other words, it is you saying what has been done over a particular period of time. To give a very simple example, when you are at primary school or your children are at primary school, at the end of the term they get a report. And that report tells you how they have performed over the period. It is the same thing here as regards the UNCCD. What we're trying to find out is what has happened and how it has happened over a period of time. So in short, reporting is really a stock-taking process. It is you saying what you have done and what has been achieved. So now we understand what basically reporting is. But reports take particular forms, and this is important. For example, as I said before, in a school report, it might just give you what the child has done in mathematics or in English, but might also tell you his conduct, how he behaved, how he dressed. So report takes different forms, and it is important, therefore, that we understand what form the reporting process in the UNCCD takes. Now, the UNCCD, as you know, has been in existence since 1996, and we have had 4 reporting cycles. The first 3 reporting cycles were very different from the 4th reporting cycle and from the 5th reporting cycle, which we should begin this year. We will get to that sometime later. But for now, let us deal with the history of reporting. Well, for the first 3 reporting cycles, reports were basically quite descriptive. There was a reason for this. There was no UNCCD 10-year strategy, and this we will come to shortly. What countries did, they report in accordance with the convention itself. Now, as I had explained earlier some time ago, the convention is full of what is called blanket or universal norms. If you look at this convention, you would see that there is no indicators, there is no way to really measure the implementation process. And after 10 years of UNCCD, it was realized that in order for us to understand what is really happening on the ground, what countries are doing and how effective that action is, you need to have a sort of report which can reflect that. And so in 2007 at COP8, the country parties agreed to adopt what is called the UNCCD 10-year strategic plan. And that plan runs, as I have explained in an earlier lecture, runs from 2008 and 2018. Now, the fundamental thing about this 10-year strategy is this, that it is based on something called result-based management, RBM. In other words, it is focused on getting concrete results. So, unlike the convention, which did not specify concrete results, but just generally spoke about implementation and reversing the desertification and land degradation process, the strategy now is based on trying to achieve concrete results. So, what is important here to note is that the strategy contains what is called strategic objectives and operational objectives. The strategy has 4 strategic objectives and it has 5 operational objectives. Now this is something that you need to understand clearly. The strategic objectives, they are aimed at the long-term realization of the objectives of the convention. In other words, changing conditions on the ground. The operational objectives are more short and medium term, and they're basically based on trying to ensure that certain actions are taken over the short and medium term, which will then lead us to achieving the long-term strategic objectives. So what we have here is a strategy that contains not just the long-term things that you want to achieve, but also the actions as to how that should be achieved. Now, I want to underline here, I want to make this clear to you that when you talk of strategic objectives, it is what you want to reach, the goal. When you talk about operational objective, look at the word operational. Here you're talking about actions. Okay? That is fundamental to understand. Because later in this lecture, you would see the relation between them, but also the difference. Now, so we have 4 strategic objectives, and that will be one of the questions at the end of this lecture. You would find out for yourself what they are. And we have 5 operational objectives. But it is one thing to say that you want to reach this, and it's one thing to say you're going to do these things to reach this. Okay? But how do you know whether you are getting there and whether or not your actions are actually having effect? Therefore, you need to do something called measure. If you cannot measure, then you don't know exactly how much you're doing, and you don't know what effect it is having. Let us take a very simple example. If you're in a car traveling from one city to the other, and you don't have a speedometer, you do not know how quickly you're traveling, and you do not know when you're going to get there precisely. But if it's 100 miles from one city to the other, and you're traveling at 100 miles an hour, then you should get there in 1 hour. If you're traveling at 50 miles an hour, then you should get there in 2 hours. This is why measurement is important. Now, in order for us to be able to measure, we must do 2 things. We must be able to monitor and evaluate. And in order to monitor and evaluate, you need what? You need indicators, things which show you how you're performing. Now, we come back to what I was talking about earlier, which is the strategic objective and the operational objective. As I said, the strategic objective are the long-term objective, the things we want to reach in the long term, right? While the operational objectives are medium and short term. Now, because these 2 objectives are related but different, we need different indicators to be able to measure them. So we come back to the word operational. Remember I said operational objective. And because these are operational, it means you have to take action. You're performing something. And because you're performing something, you need performance indicators. So that's the first set of indicators that we have within the UNCCD process. Performance indicators, because they measure operation. They measure how the operational objectives are being achieved. And then we have impact indicators. The impact indicators measure how the strategic objectives are being achieved. Because as we said, the strategic objective is what you want to reach in the long term. It is the goal that you're aiming at. So this is why you have 2 sets of indicators. You have performance indicators, which measure how you're doing as regards the operational objectives. And you have impact indicators, which measure how you're doing as regards the strategic objectives. So this, therefore, is the basis. This is what the reporting process is based upon in real terms, in concrete terms. Now, all of that is well and good. You have your objectives, you have your indicators. so you can measure what you're doing and so on. But reporting is a process. It is something that you have to organize. And if you don't organize it, then you will not have a report. So how do we put a report together? This is the question. How do country parties put a report together? Well, you must put a system in place. And firstly, there must be some sort of leadership. If you don't have somebody leading the process, then the process will not be organized. Now, as we have explained in earlier lectures, there's something called a national focal point. And generally speaking, it is the responsibility of the national focal point to set this leadership program in place, to put leadership in place, to lead the reporting process. But just with leadership alone, you're not going to be able to achieve the report. You're not going to be able to get the report done. So you need some other things. Therefore, you're going to have some sort of body, a group of people to help you. But you must have one person who is ultimately responsible for the report. And this is what is called the reporting officer. Okay? Now, once you have your organizational structure in place, you have your reporting officer, you have your leadership in place, of course, you must get the report done. To get the report done, what is fundamental is something called information or data. You have to gather the information, the data, but it has to be relevant. So we will come to how you make that relevant in a short moment. But in making it relevant, you also have to verify that the information is correct. So you need to have the proper data, the relevant data, you need to verify that data, and then you write the report. Once the report is written, it is now ready for official submission to the UNCCD. And so we come to the question of what is relevant information. Now, the UNCCD, as I said, is now in its 5th reporting cycle. And I said to you that the first 3, reporting cycle 1, 2, and 3, were done in accordance generally with the convention. And reporting cycle 4, and now reporting cycle 5, would be done in accordance with the demands of the strategy, the 10-year strategy, specifically relating to the strategic objective and the operational objective. Now, because of this, the whole reporting system from the 4th reporting process has been redesigned. And we now have something in place called the PRAIS. The PRAIS is spelled P-R-A-I-S. And that acronym stands for Performance Review Assessment of Implementation System. That is what the PRAIS means. And now, country parties are submitting their report through the PRAIS system. Now, the PRAIS system is fundamentally different from what we had for the first 3 reporting cycles in many ways. Firstly, it is now a technological system. Okay, it's not hard copy reports anymore. And that's the first thing. Secondly, there are specific templates with specific questions. So this is where we come to the issue of relevant information. To make the report relevant, you therefore have to answer the questions in accordance with the template. The template gives specific questions which you must answer. And when you answer those questions correctly, then the information becomes relevant. This is the system that the UNCCD has used for the 4th reporting process and will be using for the foreseeable future. Of course, this is a work in progress and changes will be made. But the reporting now is, generally speaking, in an electronic format. That is what the reporting is all about. Now that we have had that, as I've said before, this is just an introductory lecture. As you are aware, the 5th reporting process will take place this year, 2014, and we will also be having a special e-learning course to help you with that reporting process. So for now, this is what I wanted to tell you about the reporting process. I'd like you to consider the following questions. What are some of the indicators, performance and impact indicators, already agreed to by the UNCCD? What is the role of the CRIC in the reporting process? And finally, what is the role of your STC in the reporting process? As you would recall, an STC is a scientific and technological correspondent. What is his or her role when you are preparing your national reports? Finally, again, we provide course materials for you to read and to help you in answering the questions which comes at the end of each part of the course, and there will be questions as regards this reporting process. So I would advise you to also consult these reading materials, and don't forget, we have a full team who are prepared to help you in any way you so wish. Thank you, and I wish you great success.